So you want to know just how many science fiction movies are out there, feature-length science fiction movies? Well, I dare say look no further. You're quite unlikely to find a more precise answer than the one I have labored many years to give you today. If you only want a number, I will give it to you now. The number is 16,258. Okay. There's obviously some more stuff going on, some quite geeky stuff. But if all you wanted is a number, 16,258, you have my list on Letterboxd. The link is in the description. However, okay, there is a more accurate answer, paradoxically more accurate because it's also a lot less precise. So the better answer of how many science fiction movies are there is somewhere between 16,000 and 17,000. So there's quite a gap here, right, between a very precise number, 16,258, and between 16K and 17K, like 1,000 movie difference. So why is there such a difference, okay? It's kind of a philosophical question. It's also a very geeky question, and this is what this video is. It's supremely geeky. Okay, so here we go. Yeah, my name is Christian Malte, by the way. Like, I'm a poet and philosopher, and if you haven't guessed, I'm a huge sci-fi geek enthusiast, have been ever since I was a very small child. And when I was a kid, somebody gave me a copy of the Phil Hardy Overlook, the Aurum movie encyclopedia, and I grew up on it. I read it, hundreds of times, really. Basically learned it by heart, and decided that I would watch every single movie in this encyclopedia. And this eventually is what led me here, and partly because obviously the edition I had was the 1983 edition, 83-84. They kept making science fiction movies. There were later editions. The last one was in 1995. So at the beginning I wanted to keep counting the movies I had seen. So I had to make lists by hand at the time. And eventually the years passed, but I still wanted to keep track of the movies I had seen, and more crucially, the movies that were out there. That was the impetus that led me to count the science fiction movies, all the science fiction movies ever made on God's green earth, which I did do. Okay, so how did I come up with the list? Well, first of all, this implies defining a couple of things, right? So the idea is that we're listing science fiction feature-length movies. So it's a list of science fiction feature-length movies, okay? And each of these elements, if we're actually making a list, if we actually want to count, well, when you get down to it, you have to define all these things. And if you don't do it at first, you find out pretty soon that it makes quite a difference how you interpret the meaning of those words. So list, that's easy. That's the easy part. You have movies, you list them. Though the one caveat here is that it was important to me to list movies from every country. This was very important to me. Phil Hardy did that in as much as he found them. I found out later that the encyclopedia was far from complete, but he did as best a job as he could. I was making a list of all science fiction movies from all countries. Okay, but what about science fiction? What counts as a science fiction movie. So I did a video or two on that specific topic. What is science fiction? The truth is that no one really knows. We all have a feel for what it means, and we kind of have an inner radar that tells us, yeah, this is science fiction, or this isn't science fiction. But when you're making a list and you have to decide, does this make the cut or not, you usually find that wherever you put the line, there's always one exception. Okay, you always end up moving the line somewhat to include either a movie you really want to include or something that would make no sense to exclude. And even furthermore, because you find out eventually that a lot of movies that are not considered science fiction, quite often because they're considered horror movies, but even other genres, they are actually 100% science fiction movies. Like Carrie is a famous example. So essentially, because she's not a witch. Like, she has actual physical properties. She takes books from the library about, puberty and psychic phenomena, but they're supposed to be scientific books in the movie. So it is science-based. Her mother is religious in Carrie, but the movie isn't, and that's actually a huge part of the core narrative of Carrie, right? So it's actually Carrie, like a lot of Stephen King movies, actually, it is totally a science fiction movie. So that sort of thing happens pretty often, actually. So essentially, anytime I could make a good faith argument for why a movie should be considered sci-fi, I put it on the list. So some examples, again, because this is the geeky stuff. So first of all, I had the Phil Hardy book. I counted all the movies one by one. In fact, at first I built a Drupal 7 website. For many years, I worked as a Drupal 7, web guy, essentially. Like, I built websites with Drupal 7, took care of them, I had clients and so forth. So Drupal 7 was a tool I was comfortable with. Anyway, that's a whole other geeky topic. But so I built that. So, and every time I would find a new movie, I would create a new page in my custom content type for a movie, which had something like 215 fields. And so here's Dead Mountaineer Hotel, 1970, 76, 77, Estonia, SSR, etc. So I did that for every single movie in the Overlook Encyclopedia. So that was that. And generally speaking, when I see a new movie, which I haven't included in the list yet, and I keep finding them, not every day, but usually every week, I find at least a couple I didn't know about. If it fits with the way Phil Hardy made his initial selection, I will include it. So, for instance, he put all the silent movie era shorts, like the Méliès movie, the Segundo, the Chaumont movies. So that's more for the feature length question. But that is to say, those movies, if they have a vaguely scientific, inclination to them, I would include them. So in the case of the Méliès shorts, recently a new one was found called Gugus et l'Automaton. So it's just an animated mannequin, essentially. So there's not much science there, right? Not much. But it's usually considered a form of science fiction. I included. Same for Hoffman's Tales. There's a few versions of Hoffman's Tale, either the opera or the stories themselves. There's one story in there, I think, which is again an automaton, like it's a sort of wind-up ballerina or something. I haven't seen it, but quite a famous story. So that's, again, the science part is pretty remote, but Phil Hardy considered it science fiction. It's in there. Same with Golem movies, like the Golem of Prague. And I've always wondered why he included them. But I think it's because he saw a affiliation between those movies and the Frankenstein movies. And for that reason, I'm guessing that he felt he needed to include the Golem movies, which are, they're magic, they're rabbinic magic. Okay, so but he included them, so I included them, even though, as far as I'm concerned, they're really clearly not science fiction at all. But it just goes to show you that whatever line you think is clear, you always find something of an oddity which throws all your certainties into the air. Anyway, if there's robots, time travel, any other known sci-fi trope, even if there's magic in the story, even if most of the story is magic, I put it in there. Okay, it counts as science fiction. All superhero movies I put in there, mainly because they're usually they do have an element of sci-fi. Superman comes from outer space and so forth. Flash had this lab accident, so usually there's something like that. Batman, he has his gadgets, so it kind of feels like sci-fi. Certainly, the villains quite often have a sci-fi element, but eventually you get to to superheroes like Captain America, especially like the 70s Captain America. He was made with the super soldier serum, of course, so that right there makes it science fiction. But sometimes the adaptations, they're not so clear. Like, what about Punisher movies? Doctor Strange, is it sci-fi? It's obviously, it feels more like fantasy, it's magic, but okay, maybe the Dormammu dimension is actually another realm of something or something which might be scientific, and eventually in the comic books it's all mixed up, the fantasy and the science fiction, right? So I included all of those guys. And Punisher, I'm not quite sure, because he's just a guy who shoots people. but I need to double check. But usually, if it has anything to do with science fiction, I counted it. This includes those Turkish satanic movies with a K. I think that's what they name it. Anyway, Turkish superheroes dressed as skeletons, they count. Okay, James Bond copies, they are almost always included, because the gadgets and the capers of the bad guys often have something of a sci-fi element. And also the idea here is that what's his name, Phil Hardy included it, so I included. ESP movies I mentioned, if there's something like a psychic power, I included. If it's magic, usually I don't. But again, this just goes to show you the difference between sci-fi and fantasy. We want to believe that one is rational and the other isn't. I counted them. I checked them one by one. I didn't see all of them, but I made a pretty thorough, analysis of what the actual corpus is. It's all fantasy, people. Okay, I love it. I love it very much. And obviously the feel is quite different. And it's not disparaging towards sci-fi to say that it's fantasy, but yeah, it's a fantasy about logic. It's a fantasy about science, and it has to have something of a scientific feel somewhere in it. But, it almost never makes sense. Like even so-called hard sci-fi, usually, maybe some of it, maybe, but in movies there's almost none of it. Like, okay, so I haven't seen The Martian, actually, the Matt Damon movie, but yeah, okay, he's on Mars for stuck on Mars for I don't know how many years. Okay, how does he survive the radiation? How does he survive like the dust, like same as the moon dust, which gets into all this stuff and which is super, toxic and gets into all the seams of even the airtight spacesuits, like stuff like that. How does that, again, I haven't seen specifically The Martian, but usually if you look around, you find that it's an artful illusion. So it's all a magic trick, like to further our suspension of disbelief. But anyway, still the feel is massively different between fantasy and sci-fi, but it is a matter of feel, which is which. Anyway, but still, if there's a gadget, if there's a robot, if there's ESP, if it's a World War III movie, I always included. That includes stuff like Tarkovsky's Sacrifice. So yeah, if it's something around that theme, it's always included. Anything to do with cryptozoology with Phil Hardy most of the time didn't include. Stuff like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster. Usually I will include because it's a monster with a vaguely somewhat scientific, worldview the movie has. And you will say, well, it's pseudoscience. But yes, pseudoscience is what science fiction does. That's the reality of it. We don't like to hear it. And again, I'm not disparaging it. I love it. Okay, it's a big part of, dare I say, almost my life's work. It's not the only thing, but it's a big part of it. I spend tons and tons of stuff of my time, going through this stuff, and I love it with all my heart, and I respect it, and I adore it. But it's not really science, okay? And that question is important, okay, for reasons we'll mention in other videos. But it's all poetry, okay? You have reason and you have poetry. Those are the two main ways we make sense of the world. And this is all poetry, and that's what it is. That's what it is, okay? The terrible secret of sci-fi. Anyway, cryptozoology, I include them. And at the end of the day, every monster movie, or just about, I included. There are a few exceptions, but they're rare. And so one exception is I did not include Brian Yuzna's Society. The most extreme body horror movie you will probably ever see. Very good. It's a very good movie. Very cool. True body horror. And it's a comedy at the same time. Anyway, I did not include it because Brian Yuzna made a quite good case, quite convincing artistic case of why he didn't want it to be considered as science fiction. Saw an interview, and the fact is that the movie deliberately does not explain anything of the extremely gruesome and strange goings-on that end up happening. And that's by design. And for stuff like that, it has to be something of that type. It's so deliberately unexplained that it is clear that the movie does not want it to be considered scientific, but something else. But not an allegory per se. Like, it's a very fine line, okay? But again, Society I didn't include, but most monsters I will include, except again, if it's clearly 100% magical. Feature length, 40 minutes. That's the length I chose. I actually think 40 minutes is way too short for a feature length. I would probably say that 50 minutes is a more reasonable minimum. But the fact is that I might have even started at 60 or something like that. But I kept finding new movies that I wanted to include, and I can't not put this one in the list. There's no way I can put this movie or that movie. So I kept, diminishing by 1 minute every few months. Okay, 58 minutes. Oh, okay, 56 minutes. And eventually I ended up at 40 minutes. I don't remember the movie I wanted to include, and at 40 minutes, I was like, okay, 39 minutes? No, there's no way. I could not find a single atom of my body, a single molecule that was that would not revolt, if I put 39 minutes as feature length. Though there would be a case to be made for that, I guess. But 40 minutes is what I ended up with. Again, the exception is the Méliès movies, Segundo de Chaumont, like the shorts, like the Edison shorts and the first Frankenstein movie in 1910, stuff like that. Okay. And and finally, the most difficult category, and you would think it's simple, right? So, list of feature-length science fiction movies. Well, what about the movie part? Seems easy? Nope. So there are obviously a whole bunch of movies which are recognizably self-evident movies. Phil Hardy's category, like his criteria was if it played in a movie theater somewhere on Earth. But for that reason, he did include serials, like the old Batman serials from the 40s, or Commando Cody, stuff like that. So he included those. But he did not include TV movies, except if they did play in movie theaters, like the 70s Incredible Hulk. A few of them played, like in Europe. But I did. Okay, I wanted to see them, and I wanted to count them, and it didn't seem fair, and it didn't seem right to the geeky gods. Like, it seemed to me like if you want to know how many science fiction movies are actually extant, like how many were made, okay, and I really did want to know. Well, that also counts like TV movies, especially since in the 70s there were quite a few that were pretty good, actually. So I counted the TV movies. I also counted the direct to DVD movies, obviously, anything like that. But okay, in terms of the TV productions, I also counted miniseries. Okay, like the V miniseries, for instance, or America with a K, that notorious Cold War show from the Reagan period. But obviously that posed the question of, okay, when is it a miniseries and when is it just a TV show? Like, is The Prisoner a miniseries? I still don't know. Okay. In terms of miniseries, I decided that if it told a somewhat complete story, okay, it counted as a mini-series, even if it was a pilot, okay, for a TV show, of which there are quite a few. So V ended up being a TV show. Battlestar Galactica obviously ended up as a TV show. So I think for Galactica, the first, I think there were 2 miniseries, I don't remember, but I think I counted those as movies. I would need to check, but you get the general idea, okay? But what about TV pilots? Well, that's a lot tougher. So there are 2 TV pilots for Star Trek. I did not count them. I don't think it makes any sense. It's just another episode of the TV show at the end of the day. So those I usually didn't count as movies, but sometimes they are, and that specific point, like the TV pilot, for instance, it gets really inextricable. Really, like in my Lovecraftian movies list, or in a couple of my Lovecraft movies. Videos, I mentioned that Leslie Nielsen movie in the 60s where he plays an occult detective, and he mentions Azathoth. That was a failed, unsold TV pilot. So yeah, there are quite a few of them actually. So often they're released as movies later on, so it's kind of easier for that. Like if they were shown as TV movies because the show didn't sell, well, it's less polemical to count them as movies, but still sometimes it's not so evident. So there was some judgment there. Some experimental movies, but not all, would be a whole discussion here again. Like if it was shown as an art installation, usually I definitely don't count them. Because they're not meant to be really watched. But even then, there's a couple. Like there's one called Org, I believe, with Terence Hill, which I only discovered this movie like a couple of weeks ago. Hyper obscure movie, very hard to find a copy, though I did. Anyway, and apparently the director, he thought of this movie as an art installation, but there is a narrative anyway, so I counted that one. But usually art installations, even if it has robots, I didn't count them. But still, so some of the experimental movies, they're really hard to figure out. So sometimes I put them in, sometimes I didn't. What about compilations? Like the Jerry Warren compilations. This was also a super hard one. So Jerry Warren, I use him as an example because he did a lot of them. So for instance, he would take Japanese TV shows and he would, mash them together and release them as movies. Like what's his name? Alien Fugitive, I think it was on Mystery Science Theater 3000. That's one of those. Alien Fugitive 1 and 2, and there is a ton of them. If it's something like a Jerry Warren compilation, usually I will include it. I did include it. There were a few Space 1999 compilations. I saw at least a couple of them. It's very strange because if I remember, they don't advertise themselves as Space 1999. Like it's like, oh no, they're on a spaceship, a moon-shaped spaceship. That's sort of, yeah, they don't go into too much detail, but it was just a couple of episodes of Space 1999 mashed together. Still, those I usually count. But again, what about Doctor Who compilations? That was a hard one. Right now, a lot of them are on my list, but I really feel I should remove them. And this is paradoxical again because the compilations, which was how I saw most of Doctor Who as a teenager, like on PBS, that's how we would see them. They would have one compilation of a complete story each week. Okay, so that was cool. That was very cool. And the Doctor Who serials, usually they are very well suited to such compilations because you end up with a complete story that is usually about an hour and a half long. But it is just a TV show. They're not individual movies. So, it's kind of like, if Columbo was science fiction, should we include them or should we not include them? Okay, so it's that sort of question. Well, they're TV movies, but it's a TV show. It's a TV show of rotating, TV movies. Anyway, so the Doctor Who right now compilations, they're on the list. And also I put a lot of the XXX movies, like the adult-oriented productions. A lot of them, but not all of them. mostly like the older ones, up to the 80s. Essentially, I will usually include them because again, it's geeky fun. Like how many, triple X Star Wars copies are there? Like how many triple X Batman movies are there? Some of them are anyway. That sort of thing, okay? And a few of them are actually super interesting because there was a period of time when adult movies, even full porno movies, were considered adult entertainment, not just in the prurious sense, but also in the intellectual sense. So there was one movie called Café Flèche, for instance. There's a series of them, or New Wave Hookers, right? There's a few series like that actually have a lot of depth to them, or surreal, strange, surreal, strange artistic quality to them. Yeah, so movies like Roller Babies and stuff like that. So those I have usually included. But as we get ever more recent, anyway, I did not want to put 28 horribly extreme gonzo movies on a spaceship. I just didn't want to do it, right? I will leave behind a few of the more recent porno science fiction anyway. So most of the triple X, but not all of it. And I admit here there are some gaps in my complete list. Okay, what did I exclude? Art gallery movies, I mentioned. Not movies, but installations, really. I did include that movie that lasts for like months if you play it consequently, like Bees, or The Invention of Television. Yeah, something, or The Invention of Television by the Bees. And there are like 60 or 90 chapters in that movie, and all of them are like 6, 8, 10 hours long. And I think there's actually 2 of those movies by the same guy. He's been doing that for like 30 years, from what I understand. And I saw bits of it, and I thought, well, okay, I do have to include. I will include that one. But is that a movie? Okay. If I use an old VHS and record whatever TV show, like whatever programming is on the air, including when the TV station is off the air and you have the snow, like the static. And I call that Observations of a Martian on Earth Culture, with opening credits and end credits, and put maybe a soundtrack on it. Is that a science fiction movie? Well, yes, but would I include it? Maybe. Anyway, how I counted them, I mentioned the Drupal 7 website, so that was at first what I used. Eventually, there were issues with updates because of Drupal, how they do updates. So in terms of building websites now for my own use, I used Backdrop CMS, which is a fork of Drupal 7, which is very good. But Drupal, they moved on to 8 and 9, and I think they're at 10 or something now, 10, 11. They lost me. I ended up doing it all over again, but on Letterboxd. It was built for that. It was just quicker. But how did I come up with the actual list of movies? How did I count them? Well, here you go. I went through my books. I went through the Phil Hardy book I mentioned. All of them started from 1983 and went backwards up to 1895. I also had a book of TV shows. So on my website, I also did a category for TV shows and listed all of them. But that's a topic for another day. Somebody was very nice and sent me a PDF of a very good Russian book. I don't remember if it was translated or I used Google Translate, but a Russian book on Soviet sci-fi, which had a complete list of all Soviet science fiction movies, and I don't remember if all Eastern European sci-fi movies were in there, but certainly the Soviet movies were, and there were a few that are completely unknown outside of the former Soviet Union. So that was super useful. All in all, there were maybe like 200, 300 movies in that book, but maybe 50 to 100 of them I had never heard of, very obscure. So that was super cool. So that was part of it. I used a ton of websites, good websites, cheap websites. There was one called Movie Phone, which have all the movies by year and by genre and by studio. The interface sometimes. Anyway, it's not my site. I used a lot of it still. So I went through every year and so I did that. I have a few friends who have rare sci-fi movie websites. So I went through all of those. Again, some of them I had never heard of. So I won't name them all here for various reasons, but there were a few of them. So all the websites I did, I got lists of all the Universal movies, like including the more recent ones, because it's hard to get some of the... Every period of history has difficult to find movies, even the more recent ones. So anyway, I got a complete list of all Universal movies, went through it one by one, all the science fiction movies, put that in. Same with 20th Century Fox, all the big studios, I did that. Same for cable networks like Sci-Fi, I got a lot of that from Wikipedia. Wikipedia... Usually their lists are not complete, so that was an issue, but you do get a lot of them still. Went through all the Netflix movies, all the Shutter movies. They're mostly horror, so there weren't a lot of them in there, but I certainly checked it. Disney movies, that was quick as well, because there aren't a lot of original Disney movies in general, and even less are science fiction, but I did go through it. Like every studio, every streaming service, I went through it from their inception. I went through the whole list. I like numerous Wikipedia lists I mentioned, numerous Letterboxd lists. Okay, so there's the WTF Compendium, I think one is called. That's something like 40,000 movies. Went through all that, like what's science fiction, what's vaguely science fiction, and so on and so forth. Many other Letterboxd lists I went through. Anyway, so I did all that. I did do that thing. It took me all in all about 7 years of... it's either work or procrastination. But I put in the time, and so I eventually arrived at that number, 16,258. Now, the thing is that I know of at least something like 200, 300 movies that aren't on Letterboxd, and that now can't be added for various reasons. Those are mostly the silent shorts. There's I would probably like 100, 200 of those are missing. And that's a reason, part of the reason why you can't be much more precise than somewhere between 16,000 to 17,000. Because I should, in the 16,258 number, I should probably take out a few of the Doctor Who, again, compilations, though that's arguable, but there would be like maybe 50, 60, I don't know, 100 of those I should remove. But there are about 300 movies missing from the Phil Hardy book, something around that order of magnitude. I keep finding new ones. Again, just a few every week, sometimes just a few every month, but I still find them. Sometimes I find, okay, this very obscure guy who makes movies on VHS cameras, at home in 2025, right? And he has 60 movies, and they're all naked girls running around in the park. There's one specific guy I'm thinking of. And I thought I had put down all his movies, but I was missing 15, right? So that sort of stuff happens. Or a new guy, this new obscure, Balinese director. Okay, so that's the general thing. Of those 16,000 and so movies, I have seen so far 1,339. And of the Overlook Encyclopedia list, the latest edition, the last edition from 1995, that book has, of movies that are on Letterboxd, there are 1,433. And I know this because another very nice person made a list of the Overlook Encyclopedia movies. So actually, if I had discovered that 7 years ago, it is quite likely I would not have embarked on that extremely geeky adventure. But I'm glad I did. It was a good way of a very good way of familiarizing myself with a vast trove of movies, unimaginably obscure movies, and just you can see the difference between the Overlook movie has 1,400 movies, like the Overlook book has 1,400 about titles, and my list has 16,000, so 10 times more. So it's quite a big difference. A lot of them are from after 1995. That is true. But even like before 1995, it's probably missing. Yeah, I would need to check on my still somewhat barely functioning Drupal 7 website. I have the actual number there, but it's missing a few thousand. I'm almost certain it's missing. At minimum 1,000 movies, but maybe a couple of thousand, because with all of those, Vietnamese movies and stuff like that. Anyway, but of the Overlook Encyclopedia list, I wanted to watch all of them when I was a kid. That was the initial impetus of the project, and I have to say that I have seen so far 788 of those movies. So more than half. So yeah, okay. I'm glad. This is fulfilling a promise to 9-year-old me who deserves it. And so does your own 9-year-old you, and if perchance this supremely geeky list of what I just told you has in some mysterious way brought a quantum of joy to 9-year-old you. My heart is full of happiness. Okay, I'm quite happy. Anyway, that's it for today. I have a Patreon if you want to support my work, which would be massively appreciated. Thank you. You're super cool. Till next time. Lots of other stuff to say, but for another day. Till next time, keep watching Other Skies. Live long and prosper. Take care.